Good morning. Welcome back to Planet Doug Behind the Scenes for Thursday, January 25th in the year 2024. And I have my laptop on my lap as where it is supposed to be, and it is busy exporting a Planet Doug video right now, so I can't really do anything else. So while I wait for that job to finish, I thought I would have a cup of coffee and I would talk to you. In the world of Planet Doug, I don't think I have a whole lot of things to talk about. No random notes from my life, except I noticed that Olympus just made an announcement. The Olympus, well, it's not Olympus anymore, it's OM Systems. So OM Systems announced that in the next few months, they're going to be releasing a new camera. The camera isn't of much interest to me because it's going to be one of their very expensive high-end cameras. But they also said they're going to be releasing a Mark II version of their wide-angle zoom lens. It's a 9 to 18 millimeter lens, but that's in micro four thirds terms. So the equivalent would be, you have to double it. So 9 to 18, it would make it an 18 to 36, which is a really nice range for shooting a YouTube video for me, because with a camera like this, if I'm holding it on a selfie stick, I can't really hold it very far away because it just ends up being way too heavy. So I can't hold it as far away as I can a GoPro, for example. So the camera ends up being closer to my face. And then I need a wider field of view. And that's what I've been struggling with, because I have a 12 millimeter lens, an Olympus 12 millimeter, really nice lens. But then you double that, it's a 24 millimeter equivalent. With stabilization, it becomes like 26, 27 millimeters, and it's too tight. And I have a Panasonic 12 to 35, which is a really nice range for basic photography and basic video, but it is also like 24 to 70. With stabilization, it becomes, again, 26, 27. So it's too tight. This Olympus 9 to 18 millimeters compared to 24, that's a big difference. And I have a bit of a history with this lens. I used to own one. I left years and years and years ago when I left from Taiwan. One of the lenses I had with me was the original Olympus 9 to 18, and I was only using it for photography. But then when I was in the Philippines, I fell one day and I smashed, my camera with that lens was on it, hit rocks, and the lens just shattered into pieces. And that was the end of that lens. And when I was back in Kuala Lumpur recently, I considered buying one of those to replace it, because if I wanted like a wide angle lens or a wide angle zoom, that was probably the least expensive option available to me. And I found one that a friend of mine in KL helped me contact someone who was selling one used. And then I met up with this guy, but the sale didn't work out. The weird things were happening with that lens. It didn't seem to be in good condition. And then I saw a bunch of brand new ones for sale at a used camera store at a very good price, and I really was tempted to buy one. But I asked the guy if I could, it was actually at a different camera store, I was able to test one, and I went out for a walk with the 12 to 18 on my Olympus camera, the one I'm using right now. And I used it to shoot some, test video. And then I shot the same video with the 12 millimeter. And I guess that's where I went wrong, because if I had seen the 9 to 18 by itself, I probably would have went, oh yeah, this looks pretty good. And I would have bought one. But then I had it side by side with the video from the 12 millimeter, and then there was no comparison. The 12 millimeter lens, the original price was like $1,000. It was close to $1,000 lens. It's a prime f2 pro level lens, and the 9 to 18 is a much, much cheaper lens, and the video quality, there's just like no comparison. So when I was comparing the 12 millimeter video to the 9 millimeter video, it was like I couldn't buy the lens after I did the side-by-side comparison. But I'm wondering whether the new version, the new Olympus 9 to 18, what have they changed? Like, have they improved the optic quality? So the other alternative for me, assuming I wanted to stick with the Panasonic and Olympus line of cameras, which is not a done deal. I mean, I'm not fully committed to this camera lineup. To be honest, I wouldn't mind abandoning it and switching over to like a Sony. The ZV-E10 seems like a very reasonable option, and Sony announced that the ZV-E10, they're going to be releasing a new version of that camera this year. And if you had $1,000 to spend, that would probably be the better route to go, assuming that the stabilization is good enough. There's a really nice range of lenses available. The ZV-E10 is an APS-C sensor camera, so it's not full frame, but it's bigger than Micro Four Thirds. You know, APS-C is a real sweet spot, and the ZV-E10 is smaller and lighter even than my Olympus camera because it has no viewfinder. You know, their ZV-E10 was their attempt at making a APS-C vlogging camera, like a video-centric camera. And to do that, they removed things that they would think only a photographer needs, like a videographer, a vlogger in particular. We don't really need a viewfinder. I like having one, to be honest. I'd prefer to have one, but you don't really need one. And once you remove the viewfinder, it makes the camera significantly smaller and lighter. And so that's a good route to go, assuming you had the money to shift. You know, if I had the money to get out of the Olympus line and buy into Sony, I would probably do it. But assuming I don't have the money to do that, another alternative would be to buy a lens that fits this camera. And that would be, you know, the 9mm Panasonic that I've already talked about. That would probably be the best option. And then now, though, there is this Olympus 9 to 18. And having that zoom range, you know, it's not going to be as good, you know, optical quality as the Panasonic 9mm Prime, but maybe it's good, you know, it's a good trade-off to trade off some, like a little bit lower video quality in exchange for the ability to zoom from 9 to 18. And I believe it will be a cheaper lens too, the Olympus, even brand new. Anyway, so that's kind of on my mind in the world of Planet Doug and camera gear right now. This announcement from Olympus that they're coming out with a 9 to 18mm zoom, and the announcement from Sony that they're coming out with the Mark II version of the ZV-E10. I think I have the naming correct there. So that's pretty exciting, but that's months and months and months down the road. And we don't have any information about the 9 to 18 lens. All they've said so far is that Olympus is planning to release it, but no details beyond that. So I don't really know anything about it. I have an unusual video to kick off my YouTube stories section, because this one is not from a travel vlogger, because normally I talk about Itchy Boots videos, Bold and Bankrupt videos, you know, Backpacker Ben, you know, people like that. But this is a video from someone I don't think I've ever heard of before. I've never seen a video from this guy. I didn't know anything about him, and he is a piano player from the UK. His name is Brendan Kavanagh, and I guess what he does, he has a YouTube channel, and he goes out into the world of London, and I guess in London there are an assortment of public pianos. So there's a piano in a public space. I saw this recently in Kuala Lumpur, actually, at the Pasar Seni MRT station. You go down deep into the station, and then you turn the corner, and there's a piano just sitting there, and it's open for anybody to sit down and play. So this guy, Brendan Kavanagh, I guess he does that. He goes out into London, finds one of these public pianos. He has a guy with him shooting video with a smartphone, I think, smartphone on a gimbal, though I never did see what kind of camera he's using, but I'm assuming smartphone on a gimbal, and he does live streams. So he plays the piano, and then he does a YouTube live stream. And it's not a surprise that even if I came across this guy in the past, I wouldn't go out of my way to watch one of his videos because he plays boogie woogie, and boogie woogie has no appeal to me at all. So I'm not really into music. You know, I'm not into jazz, I'm not into boogie woogie. And then he plays this boogie woogie, and then other people who are skilled piano players will join him and they play together. And then people will crowd around and people will dance. And anyway, it's just not something that appeals to me. You know, if I have a choice of videos to watch on YouTube, some guy playing boogie woogie is not going to be high on my list. So I've never heard of this guy before. But this video came to my attention because it has gone super viral. I have it open here somewhere. Let's find the name of it. Here it is. So the name of the video is Police Called to Stop Filming During Piano Live Stream. And so far this video, it's a live stream video, 37 minutes long, and it has over 7 million views. And then if you go on YouTube right now and just type in anything related to this story, you know, Brendan Kavanaugh, Chinese police, just type that into Google, into YouTube, and you'll see that everybody is talking about this. You know, there's a whole world of YouTube channels out there where people kind of do a video similar to this one, but more formal, more polished. You know, they actually have a home studio, and they basically sit in front of the camera and just talk about current events and news of the day. And a lot of these channels have names like, you know, Real Media, TV Today, you know, but it's just one guy in front of his own camera and just talking about current events. And everybody's talking about this video and what happened. So you can go out, I did a deep dive, you know, when I stumbled across this story. I was so interested in it that I went down the rabbit hole and I watched all these videos of other people talking about them. And I guess back in China, this video has just been spreading like wildfire in China as well on social media. But of course in China, they're portraying it in a very different light than they are here in the West, or not here in the West, because I'm not in the West, but I am from the West. So yeah, so there's a whole lot going on. And in fact, Brendan Kavanaugh was just interviewed for the Piers Morgan show. I guess it's Piers Morgan Uncensored. And then Brendan Kavanaugh's interview with Piers Morgan was just posted to YouTube, and I watched it this morning. It's a very short kind of segment, but yeah, it was really quite entertaining. What I found so interesting about it was how crazy it was. Like the man in particular, how loud he was shouting, and the things he was saying were so weird. It was just such a bizarre thing. This is a very bizarre occurrence. Like, I have no idea what was going on in this guy's head. It was just such a strange situation. And of course, it involves the whole concept of YouTube posting video to the internet, to social media, and the whole thorny legal and ethical issues of filming in public. What are the rights? What are the legal? And you know, these change from country to country, what you're allowed to do. And I watch a lot of YouTube videos, and this does come up a lot, where even people in Canada and the United States will approach vloggers like me, you know, YouTubers, and if they're angry or upset because, you know, you're walking down the street with your camera and some random stranger ends up in your video and they don't want to be on video. And, you know, fair enough, you know, not everybody wants to be in some, you know, vlogger like me. You know, they want to be in my video. It's like, yeah, well, fair enough. You know, I understand. But then they will approach the YouTuber and say, you don't have the right. You need my permission to have me in your video. And that, of course, is completely wrong in Canada and the United States and most of Western Europe that I'm aware of. Anything you can see from a public space, you can film. So you don't need people's permission to film them. And that, but a lot of people in Canada and a lot of people in the United States, they actually believe it's true that you have no right, that you have to have their permission to take video of them. And that's not actually true. So in other countries, I think it is true. I mean, the laws are different everywhere around the world. And then these people from China, they had this concept of, image rights. And that's what they were talking about. And then, so that's what kind of interested me in the video. And then the fact that it went viral and then everybody's talking about it. And then, of course, we have all of this, like, where is all this emotion coming from? And then the more these YouTube videos you watch where people are discussing this issue, you uncover this feeling in the UK, and it's probably a common feeling in Canada and the United States and the rest of Western Europe, that there is suspicion of China, of the Chinese government. And now that China has so much economic power, they have so much influence in countries all around the world, and then people in the UK are like nervous about this. So now you get a lot of anti-Chinese government emotions, getting into these videos, and now it's set up as a story, the West versus China, and then each side is posting their version of the events and talking about what happened to make their side, put their side in the better light. And I just find all of that fascinating. It's quite an interesting, quite an interesting event. So I'm still sort of following that story here on Planet Doug. And this relates to another topic I was talking about in an earlier BTS video. I talked about this at length in 2 different videos, actually. And this is the story of Itchy Boots and her experience in Nigeria with the police officers. She was riding her motorcycle through Nigeria, going through a bunch of police checkpoints. And then at one of the checkpoints, the police got her to stop. And then they were chatting and having the usual conversation. But then the police officer said to Itchy Boots, like, give me something. Can you give me something? Give me money. And then, Itchy Boots didn't give him any money, but then she rode away. And then for that video, she chose as her thumbnail a photograph of this police officer. And the title of the video was, corrupt Nigerian police officer demands money. And then that went viral. The video was picked up in Nigeria by media outlets there, social media. Everybody was watching it and talking about it, and it ended up with that police officer and his partner, both of them getting fired. So there was actually a video online, a public ceremony of them being stripped of their uniform and then fired from the Nigerian police force because they asked Itchy Boots for money. And they, obviously the Nigerian authorities wanted to make an example out of these 2 guys and send a message that, corruption and extortion by the police is not acceptable. And my feeling about the whole matter was that it was way overblown. My take on it is that, Itchy Boots is just casually making her thumbnails and her video titles, and I can relate to how difficult that is. I struggle so much with that, because in one day of shooting video, you might do 20 different things. So, like, what is the thumbnail about? What is the title about? And if you describe it accurately, like Itchy Boots, that day, I rode my motorcycle through Nigeria. I mean, that is what happened, but that's not a very exciting title. So she's trying to come up with a title that's, so she's like, what is the most sensational, the most exciting thing that happened this day? And to be honest, her interaction with that police officer wasn't really very exciting. It was really, from my point of view, a bit of a nothing burger. But, if you choose the right thumbnail with a police officer looking angry, and then you write, corrupt police officer demands money, that's an exciting title. People are going to click on this video, which of course, to my mind, makes it clickbait. And then she just sort of did this, casually, like, I just have to make a thumbnail, so I'll make a thumbnail. But then it ended up going viral, and it ended up getting these two men fired from their jobs. You know, whether they deserve to be fired or not, I guess that's a matter of opinion. Mine is no, they did not deserve to be fired for that. But, you know, that's something you can have your own opinion about. And this situation with Brendan Kavanaugh and this Chinese film crew and tour group, whatever they are, I still don't really know who these people were, you know, why they lost their minds like this in public. All of the internet is investigating them now, and all of these people are being doxxed. So I came across one guy, like, does one of these news channels on YouTube, and then he found the identities of some of these key people, like the guy who was screaming so much, the man who really caused all the trouble. I don't know how he found his identity. You know, maybe he has a, you know, image search engine on his computer that you can take a screenshot of the guy's face, because it shows up in the video occasionally, and then you can search and then locate him in social media. So they found the guy, and then he gave his name, showed his resume, all the companies that he works for. I guess he's some sort of a consultant and this, that, but he's got associations with a dozen different Chinese-based organizations, schools, companies. I don't know, you know, that whole world I don't know anything about. But anyway, he put his name out there on the internet with all of his information on social media and all of his resume. And then they found out who this woman was. Like, the first woman who came to talk to Brendan, you know, we know who she is as well. And this guy said, okay, this is her name, and this is where she works, and this is everything about her. And she's the one who came out with her own video giving her side of the story. And as I said, I haven't been able to find that full video yet, but the little clips that I saw, she started the video saying, okay, this happened, and now I'm in big trouble. Like, you know, this thing went viral, and now I am being bullied. Like, the entire internet is attacking me online, and now I feel like I have to defend myself here. But yeah, so this whole story gets into this other idea of putting people's identities and faces on a YouTube video, and what that can mean for these people, particularly if it is something negative. And then we have this, I don't know how old this word is. I should look it up, because I've only heard it since I started shooting YouTube videos, that people are doxxed. And when you dox someone, you basically post their name and address on the internet, so people know who they are and where they live, which obviously, if you're doing this from a malicious point of view, of course that's very unethical to post anybody's home address on a YouTube video. You know, if you dox them, that's a very bad thing to do. And in this case, are they doxing these people? I guess yes and no. I mean, they're in a very public video, and they're acting in their official capacity. You know, these aren't people who just, you know, were waiting in line at McDonald's and then just lost their mind and started shouting horrible things. These were, you know, people working in a film crew, you know, who had an interaction with a YouTuber also filming. The weird thing about the story that nobody has mentioned, it hasn't come up anywhere, is that Brendan was shooting a live stream. And it's interesting that Brendan, he never mentioned it either. So when these people came up to him and said, listen, you know, please don't show us in your video. Like, we know you're going to post this video to YouTube, so when you do, please remove the sections that show our faces, because we're not allowed to have our faces shown on your video, and you don't have the image rights to do that. But of course, Brendan, he's like, he could have said, well, it's too late. It's a live stream. It's already on YouTube. I mean, I don't know how many people were watching the live stream. I don't know how popular his live streams are, but he could have said, well, sorry, too late. I mean, there are thousands of people watching the video live right now. So everything you're saying to me is out there right now. It's on YouTube as we speak. So there's nothing I can do about it at this point. And the same thing when the police constable talked to him, and she basically said, you know, turn off your camera. I don't want you recording this. And then Brendan asked her, like, why? And then she says, well, I know what you're going to do. You're going to take this video and post it to YouTube, and I don't want this on YouTube. Can't we just have a conversation? And again, Brendan could have said to her, well, too late. We're live on YouTube. Everything you just said, thousands of people just heard you say it. There's thousands of people watching us right now, you know, like say hi to my live stream audience. But he never said that. And in all of the interviews later on and all the discussion of this issue, nobody has pointed this out, that, you know, please don't put us on YouTube. Please delete the footage. Please don't show our faces. All of these requests are moot because it's a live stream and it's all being broadcast live at the time. And again, that's another interesting ethical area, isn't it? That, I mean, for me, if I wanted to shoot a live stream sitting here, why not? There's no ethical questions involved. But if you do go outside and you're shooting video in public in a live stream, yeah, no, I think you do have to stop for a minute and think through the ethical ramifications of that and the possible consequences of that. You know, things can happen in a live stream that you have no control over because it's going out live. You can't do anything about it later, you know. So, yeah, I mean, if I'm out shooting a Planet Doug video and I'm walking around Medan and something bad happens, someone says something bad to me, you know, someone gives me the finger, you know, flips me off, shouts a profanity at me, which happens, you know, relatively frequently. People here are, you know, students in particular, they're just having fun with English and they're trying out the new curse word that they learned, you know. And they see a foreigner go by with a camera and, you know, they're a bunch of, you know, young teenage boys. What are they going to do? You know, they're going to shout profanities at me. And I get that on video all the time, but I'm not putting it out live. I don't include it in my video because I don't think it's significant. It doesn't matter. They don't really mean it, and I don't want to get these boys in trouble. So if someone shouts profanities at me when I'm out shooting a video, I have the choice later on to remove it from my video, which is what I do. But if it's a live stream, it's out there, you know, and people can get in trouble. I've told this story before. I remember this was before I was shooting YouTube video. I was in Sumatra years and years ago, and I was taking pictures at that time. And you know, a lot of people are always posing for pictures, and then, you know, a whole bunch of students, a bunch of boys were around me at the time, and they all say, you know, picture, picture, picture. They want me to take their picture. So they all posed, and I took their picture, and then I was posting these pictures to Facebook. And in the picture, one of the boys was giving me the finger. I didn't notice it at the time. I didn't notice it until later, you know, but I posted the photo to Facebook, and then people in Sumatra saw that photo, and it got back to that boy, and he actually sent me a message and he apologized. He says, oh, that's me, you know, flipping you off in the picture, but I didn't realize it was such a bad thing to do, and I didn't mean it. I was just having fun. So I had my own, you know, experience with this. You know, it's just a random photo of some friendly boys that I met, and then I put it on Facebook, and then it got that boy in trouble because he was giving me the finger in the photo. And the same thing could happen in a live stream, and then you don't have any control of it. So this whole story also has the ethics of filming in public in a live stream, especially if you're overseas. You know, what's involved in there is just something to think about, I guess. All right, a new Itchy Boots video. Very exciting. Big moment in my life when Itchy Boots posts a new video. This one is called I got stranded in the jungle of Central African Republic. And this follows up on her previous video. I talked about that in my last BTS video. She crossed the border from Cameroon into the Central African Republic, and she was trying to cover 75 kilometers on a very rough, muddy road, and to get to a town called Nola, I believe. Yes, it was called Nola, and then she didn't have enough time, and the sun went down, it became dark, and she was still on the road, and she ended up with no choice but to look for some kind of shelter. And she was near a village. The village was called Nabondo. She had an interview with like 2 village chiefs, and she asked them, like, what is the name of this village? And they said it's called Nabondo. But if you type Nabondo into Google Maps, it locates a region in C.A.R called Nabondo, but it's not really on the road that Itchy Boots was riding down. So I'm not exactly sure where she was. But anyway, she said she stopped there because it was dark and she had to stop somewhere. But she did see a mosque. And of course, in Islam, there is a tradition of being helpful to guests, of hospitality. And like, you know, if you are a traveler and you are in trouble, you know, you can go to the mosque and ask for help and ask for shelter. And the fact that this village had a mosque kind of made her feel more secure that, okay, there are people here in authority, there is an organization here, I can go to the mosque. And then they may even have, because it's a mosque public building, maybe they have a little room somewhere where I can sleep at night. Because she's not really traveling with camping gear. She might have an emergency shelter, I think she has one, but she doesn't have like a real tent and sleeping pads and sleeping bag. She doesn't have anything like that. So she needs shelter of some kind. And she stopped in this village, and the last video ended with her talking with someone in the village and using French and English. She basically arranged to spend the night there. And this video picks up the next morning, shows a little bit of what happened getting to the village, but it's mainly about her in the village the next morning. And I really loved it. It's yeah, I mentioned in the last BTS video that for me personally, I would much rather get a video from her only about the village, like shoot a video about the village. Like as she's riding her motorcycle, she tends to go from, you know, the nicest, or, you know, a secure hotel to a secure hotel. And she does that for obvious reasons. You know, she's a woman traveling on her own in a very remote area. For her, just a pitcher tent in the middle of nowhere is not as wise as it would be for me, or for, you know, any man doing the same thing. We're quite a bit more free to stay where we want, and she doesn't quite have that freedom, obviously. So she's always trying to get to the next town so she can stay in a hotel. And for my money, if it was possible for her to stay in all these villages at night and make a video about all these villages, personally, I would find those much more interesting and engaging than the videos about riding the motorcycle. But mostly her videos are about the journey during the day, not the night, you know, where she spends the night. My interest would have it flipped. I'd rather not see the journey, I'd rather see, you know, where she spent the night. And in this case, because it's a rare occasion where she spent the night in this very small village, about 500-600 people, and her being there obviously was a very big deal. And then when she woke up in the morning and was getting ready to leave, you know, more and more and more people from the village gathered around her motorcycle just to examine it and take pictures of each other. You know, one guy getting on the motorcycle and posing for pictures. And, you know, everybody wants to see her and talk to her and interact with her. And she included an amazing video sequence, again, from her 360 camera. That 360 camera is like a gold mine for her. It gets so many interesting candid shots because she doesn't have to hold the camera, right? It's just sitting there all by itself, untended, and then shooting video from her motorcycle. And she included kind of not really a time lapse, but a little bit of a time lapse of the crowd of people getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And she had a really nice African music playing over top of it. It was a really nice sequence, and seeing a little bit of the village. Just a taste. And then she got on her motorcycle and started riding. And then she talked a little bit about what happened during the night. But I guess the road, again, was so muddy and so difficult and so challenging. She had to concentrate on riding, and she couldn't, just tell the whole story because she had to concentrate on what she was doing. But again, I wish she had shot video about the entire night. Like, I'd like to see it, all of the conversation, and then where she slept, how they organized the room, like where was the bathroom? She had to have some kind of bathroom facilities. Where was that? And what was that experience like for her? And then, as I talked about in my previous behind the scenes video, I've had quite a few nights like this in my life where not as many as you would think and not as many as I ever intended, because when I have gone off on cycling trips, I leave with a full set of camping gear, and my idea is to spend a lot of nights camping out in remote areas. And when the dust settles on one of these trips, I don't generally do it that much because it's too difficult. It's hard to do because most of the land in the countries that I go to, it's all being used. It's all occupied, or it's all farming land. There's no empty stretches of wilderness where I can just stop and put up a tent. So it's really hard to camp. And then when you do stop and camp and put up your tent, within seconds, the local people find you. And then quite often they might say, no, you can't, or you have to get permission. And then you have to go talk to the chief of the village. And then you end up in this whole ceremony that takes hours, and you're exhausted. You just want to go to sleep. And then it's really, really hot. And if you're by yourself sleeping in a tent, you can never leave your tent because of security, right? But you have to go get water. You've got to go into the bush and use it as a bathroom. But now how do you leave your tent for 30 minutes to go get water? You come back, everything in your tent will be stolen, right? It's like there's a lot of problems. And then if you spend the night in a village, they find a room for you, and there's a lot of discussion, a lot of organizing, a lot of sitting around eating and drinking with the people, because they're very happy that you're there. It's a big event in their lives, and they want to talk to you. But the entire time, all you're thinking is, oh, I'm so tired, I just want to go to sleep. So once you camp out for a couple of nights, you very quickly develop a pattern of, oh, I'm not in the mood for that right now. I can't face it. And then you do try to ride your bicycle to the next town just so you can find a hotel of any kind, no matter how cheap and how run down and old and dirty it is. Anything is better than spending the night, out there in your tent. And then, you just do that. Even I do it. But there were many, many occasions where I did sleep in the village with the local people. They give you a hut, like it's a village that has just like mud huts or something. And then they'll say, oh, this one is empty. You don't have to sleep in your tent. You can just go inside this hut. I've done that a few times. And then people will open up their homes to you. Or they'll find a shelter for you, and you can put your tent underneath the shelter. And so I've done that quite a bit, but it generally ends up being very exhausting to do that. It's very tiring. But then Itchy Boots does say later on at the end of her video, she does a little bit of a summary. She goes back and tells a little bit more of the story. And then she says, yeah, she went to bed at 8 o'clock. Again, because this village has no electricity at all. There's no electric lights. So people live according to the sun. Sun goes down, they go to bed. Sun comes up at, before dawn, the sky starts getting light at 4:30 in the morning. People are already up at 4:30, 5 a.m. routinely. So, and they go to bed early. So she did say she went to bed at 8 o'clock, and then early, before the sun was up, she could already hear the village was waking up already. It's got that kind of a daily rhythm. But I really enjoyed that. I wish there was a whole hour-long video, or even better, if she sat down and did like an hour-long daily podcast, just with a microphone and tell the story of the previous day. I would eat that up with a spoon. I'd be plugged in and listening to her daily podcast. You know, that would be amazing. But yeah, you got to pick and choose what you do with social media. It takes a long time to do any of these things, but I really wish she would just tell the whole story. But anyway, she did leave the village, and then she's back on the road, and muddy again, muddy, difficult road. She dumped the motorcycle once on video. I don't know whether she did it more than that, but it happened at least once. She fell over, and some local guys, you know, helped her pick it back up again. And in that moment, I was quite amused, because when the motorcycle fell over, the first thing she did was turn off the engine. And motorcycle drivers, they always do that. I guess you don't want the motor running. And of course, if you pick up the bike, then you accidentally, you know, turn the throttle. You don't want the engine on. So the first thing you do is turn off the engine. So once they got the motorcycle back upright, and she was ready to leave, she took out a key and then stuck it in the hole on her handlebars to hit the start button. Because in the previous video, when her motorcycle fell over, she had that whole drama of the plastic start button snapping off, and then eventually figuring out that, okay, well, the actual switch is still there inside. The plastic just pushes on the metal switch. So even though the plastic button was broken off, now she could take out a key and hit the button deep inside, and that's how she's starting her motorcycle now. So she had the experience again of muddy roads. Man, she's got to be tired of that by now. And she had to cross a river 2 times. And this time, the only way to get across was in a canoe, you know, what they call a pirogue. Basically a tree trunk that's been hollowed out. And they're big, but you have to think they're not big enough for such a big, heavy motorcycle. Dangerous. You got to think, man, this has got to be tippy. So every time she puts her motorcycle in one of these canoes, you know, I'm like holding my breath. I'm kind of amazed that in this entire journey, considering the number of rivers she's had to cross on so many rickety boats, barges, and canoes, that she still has never dumped her motorcycle in the river. I keep waiting for it to happen. But, you know, she made it across 2 rivers this time. Of course, from my point of view, I always want to know more logistics and details, because she has to pay all the time, right? She has to pay for every river crossing. But she doesn't ever talk about how much things cost or how much she pays. I did notice in one video recently where some men were, I think it was the men who were helping her try to fix the broken start button on her motorcycle. You know, they helped her lift the motorcycle and worked on her motorbike to try to fix it. And just as she was leaving, she opened up a bag on top of her motorcycle gas tank, took out some money, and then handed it to the guy. You know, thank you very much. And that begged the question for me, does she do that every time? Like every time the motorcycle, she dumps it and people help her, or the guys that push her motorcycle through the mud, any of these people that do this for her, that pick up the motorcycle and put it on boats and canoes, does she give each of them a tip every time? Or is that a rare occasion when she does it? Are people expecting a tip, or are they just doing it to be helpful? And then if she does give them tips, how much? Like how much money, and does she think about it? And is it a problem for her? Because for me, I think mentally, I would find it a little bit, it would weigh on my mind a little bit, like every time, like maybe you ride your motorcycle all day and you dump it 3 times, and then each time 4 men come and help you pick it up again. Every time that happens, now you're in this situation of, oh, how much? Should I tip them? Should I not tip them? How much should I tip them? Do I have enough money to tip them? If I don't tip them, do I feel guilty? If I do tip them, you know, like all these thoughts go through your head, and it would get annoying after a while, you know? And yeah, so I am curious about all of these thoughts, and she could put all that into a podcast, you know, all the behind the scenes information. And last thing I'll say about this Itchy Boots video is that the region she was going through in Central African Republic, for my money, this was by far the most beautiful, the most interesting, the most active region that she's gone through in a very long time, maybe in her entire trip through Africa so far. Lush jungle, beautiful, and more than that, there were so many people. Because I got the feeling that a lot of her trip is just empty road with nothing along the road. So like here's a town with 200 kilometers between them, and then there's nothing on that road but other people on motorcycles or other people in trucks. But this stretch of road in the Central African Republic was lined with villages, and they looked gorgeous. And there were so many people everywhere. There was like people all over the place, just living life and doing whatever they do in the villages there. And she was busy, waving and saying hello to everyone. It just looked like the most interesting area that she's passed through in a very long time. And luckily, right in the middle of that road, she didn't keep going to another town. I thought she was going to this town called Nola, and was going to spend the night in a hotel in Nola, but she knew about and picked out some kind of a jungle resort that was right on the river. So she's actually spending the night sort of out in the jungle on this river, and she took advantage of that to fly the drone. And she doesn't fly the drone very often these days, maybe to conserve battery power or the challenging muddy roads. She just doesn't have the mental or physical energy to deal with a drone. It's too much. But now that she was staying in this lodge, had a nice room and a balcony right on the river, some open space, then she flew the drone, and man, the visuals of that river going through that jungle, that was fantastic. Absolutely gorgeous. So yeah, by far my favorite video from her in a long time, in terms of the experiences she had and the fact that she was now going through a populated area with so many people around, and it was so beautiful, very jungly and lush. So yeah, I enjoyed that one quite a bit. In my last BTS video, I started talking about this video from Bald and Bankrupt. It was the one, at the time, it was called On Patrol in Pakistan's Most Dangerous Province. And it had a thumbnail of Bald sitting in the back of some kind of a jeep with a soldier, and then Bald is holding the soldier's gun. And I watched, at that time I had watched the first part of the video. It was 18 minutes long, and he was in the city of Karachi, and then the video was all about going to this beach area. And then he went into kind of a neighborhood, bunch of houses and people living there. And I talked about this at length. And I had my usual, Bald and Bankrupt reaction. My reaction to a Bald and Bankrupt video tends to follow the same pattern. And this area was called Orangi, and it has a history. And then Bald went there precisely because it has been called the largest slum in the world. So when he went there, he talked a lot about this. Here I am in the largest slum in the world, and it's so dangerous here. Nobody comes here. So much violence here, and a lot of the overblown stuff about danger and all the superlatives that are part of a Bald and Bankrupt video. And I talked about how what he was saying about Orangi is not really true anymore, because it used to be like a refugee settlement, and you could have called it a slum or a shanty town. And again, probably by rich, North American or rich European standards, well, yeah, it is still a shanty town. But for a slum in this part of the world, it doesn't qualify anymore, because what I talked about, these days, like 96% of the homes there have, have their own bathroom and latrine, probably running water. Most of them have electricity. The houses have 3 rooms, and it is now an official part of Karachi. So it isn't an informal settlement anymore. It has the same status as every other part of Karachi. And you know, it has a town council and rights within the city government, all that kind of stuff. So it doesn't really exist as, you know, the largest slum in the world anymore, the way he was describing it. So anyway, I talked about that at length in the last video. But since then, I've watched the rest of the video, and I have to say I'm really confused about it. That's my main takeaway. I'm just confused because he took the train from Karachi, where he was, to a city called Quetta, kind of a large city on a it's a border city, near a border area, I guess. I'm not very familiar with Pakistan. And then he had a bunch of adventures there where he was trying to go to another place, but in order to go there, he needed permits. He had to get permission from the military, and in the end, he wasn't able to get that permission. And then apparently they tried to go there, couldn't get permission, and then something happened. The police or the military escorted them back to the bus station, and then they're on a bus. And then the next thing I know, in the video, he's back on the beach in Karachi. And while he was there, at the end of the video, he talks about what happened. But I don't understand any of that, because everything he talked about, he never mentioned it in any other part of the video. So like when he went to Quetta, I didn't know why he was going there. And then when he's talking about trying to get to this other place, I didn't understand where he was going, where he was trying to go. He said the name of a place, but I couldn't figure it out. And he never adds like any captions or titles. So he didn't like write out the name of where the town he was trying to get to. So I couldn't find it. I was trying to read between the lines and figure out like, why did he go to Quetta and what is it he's trying to do? But I couldn't figure out any of that. And then he sums up his experience at the end is by saying, the truth is, I was told by the military here that there is no way at the present time that a foreigner will be able to complete a trip along the Afghan border towards Khalifistan and the Kalash people. That's a pity, because I think we would have had a great adventure here in Pakistan. So I guess that's what he was trying to do. But that's the first I'd heard of it. Like he went to Quetta, and then he turned around and went back to Karachi, and then he says, oh, I was trying to get to Khalifistan, and travel along the Afghan border and meet the Kalash people. That's what I was trying to do, but I failed. But it's the first time in the entire video he's mentioned any of these things. At least I don't remember him talking about it. So when he was taking the train to Quetta, I didn't know why he was going there. And then when he was, you know, dealing with the military, I don't know what he was doing or why he was trying to go there. And then suddenly he's all the way back in Karachi. And I'm like, well, why did you just leave Quetta? Quetta looked like a pretty cool place. Why don't you hang out there and do some exploring and shoot some video? And I'm also a little bit confused because he seemed surprised about all this. He was also traveling with the backpacker Ben and another YouTuber named Simon Wilson. So he has a lot of interaction with them, you know, and he's talking with them a little bit at the end. And this is when they were on the bus leaving Quetta. And then he and backpacker Ben were kind of talking about what they're doing. And Bald gets on the bus and he looks around the bus and he says, you know, my God, what is this place? Nasty. And then he looks at backpacker Ben sitting in a seat and he says, having fun, backpacker Ben? And backpacker Ben says, you know, sarcastically, time of my life. I'll tell you what though, if you want tourists to come to Pakistan, sort it out. And then Bald replies, yeah, it's ridiculous saying, come to Pakistan, we're open for tourism. And then when you come here, you basically like get put under armed guard and told what bus to get to. you can't do this and you can't do that. And that whole conversation just completely befuddles me, because, like, what did he expect? As far as I can tell, Bald and Bankrupt deliberately goes to the most, what he views as the most dangerous places, because he knows the video will be popular. So he deliberately chose to go to Pakistan, because everyone in the West has this mental image of Pakistan being very, very dangerous. And on top of that, he goes to Quetta. And on the way there, he talks about how they're going to this region where there's fighting between the army and this revolutionary group, and there's this group and there's fighting. And he gets there and he's talking about, oh, there was a terrorist explosion just down the street and people were injured and we could be killed and we could be kidnapped. And he's going on and on and on about how dangerous this area was just to be in Quetta. And now he's trying to go to somewhere else, which he describes as even more dangerous. And, so he obviously went here because it is not secure, and he was hoping to be able to have video of him with guns, with soldiers. The title of the video was On Patrol in the Most Dangerous Province of Pakistan. He did all of this deliberately, and now that he couldn't get permission from the military to go to another town, but now he's talking to Backpacker Ben, and the two of them are complaining that Pakistan isn't open to tourism. And Bald says, how it's ridiculous. They say here in Pakistan, come to Pakistan, we're open for tourism. And then you get here and the military won't let you do anything, and they put you under armed guard. And I'm like, well, what were you expecting? I mean, you chose to go to the place that is under military control because that's what you wanted for your YouTube video. I don't know, none of what he said made any sense to me at all. And as I said, I was really confused at the end of the video where he sums it up and says, oh, our plan was to go along the Afghan border and meet the Kalash people. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that's what you were trying to do. I mean, I wish I'd known that earlier. Maybe the video would have made more sense to me, right? So anyway, the video just completely befuddled me. So that was my main takeaway about it. And the fact that they're trying to go to this area, they couldn't go there, and now it looks like they're just leaving the country. They're quitting and flying out of Pakistan. And that confuses me as well, because he and at the very end, he's on the beach, back on the beach with Backpacker Ben, and he says to Backpacker Ben, Benjamin, have you had fun in Pakistan? And Benjamin says, you're having a laugh, ain't you? Get me out of here. So why not stay, right? Okay. They went to Quetta. That was cool. They wanted to go here. They couldn't go here. And now they're talking like, oh, we wanted to do this, but our trip failed and we're having no fun at all. But you still haven't really gone anywhere in Pakistan. I mean, there's all the rest of the country. Go there, I saw some comments on the video, people saying, wow, you should go to this area, go to this mountain range, go to this city, go to that pass, the Karakoram, the famous district of Pakistan. All these areas you can go to, but they're treating it like, Pakistan was a failure, and it sounds like the next thing, they're just going to hop on a flight and leave. And again, that just sort of befuddles me. I'd never understand the overall context of a Bald and Bankrupt video. So yeah, that was kind of my main takeaway, confusion. And my second reaction is similar to how I felt about some of his other videos, where he has a certain personality and a certain style that always strikes me as a bit abrasive. like he's making fun of the local people and he's making fun of everything he sees around him. And interestingly enough, I went back to look at the video again, just to remind myself of the title of the video and the thumbnail, but he changed it. So the new name of the video is Solo in Pakistan's Dodgiest Hood. So maybe he changed it because the original title was about going to the most dangerous province, but now maybe he's thinking about it as well. Actually, we kind of failed. We didn't actually manage to spend any time in this dangerous province, so that title isn't logical anymore. So he changed it to focus on where he went to, the biggest slum in the world at the start of the video. But again, I kind of got to shake my head a little bit because he says solo in Pakistan's dodgiest hood, but he's not there solo. He's there with Backpacker Ben and Simon Wilson. And Backpacker Ben already posted his video from the same beach and neighborhood. And in Backpacker Ben's video, it's all about him and Bald and Bankrupt and Simon Wilson doing all these things together. So it's the three of them going around the beach and exploring this whole area. So solo, Bald, you weren't there solo. You were there with two other people. And personally, of course, one of my pet peeves is the word solo. It's so common on YouTube, and everybody trumpets this idea that they went somewhere solo. And I'm always thinking, well, duh. I mean, everybody's solo. I mean, what's the big deal, Anyway, it's not such a big deal to go somewhere solo. Right now I am solo in Medan, but that's hardly an achievement, anything like that, right? Yeah, but the rest of Bald and Bankrupt's video after the beach and the dangerous hood, he's taking the train, and then when they're on the train, he kept talking about how horrible everything was around him and how miserable life must be for all the local people. And that always strikes me as a bit impolite, right? Because how do you know? You're in a train and you're going through this city, and he looks out at the city, and I'll quote something that he said along the way. He was just looking at a town that they were passing through, and he says, this train passing through their town must be the highlight of their day. Nothing else happens here. Just a little bit of cricket and playing in the rubbish dump. Nothing else to do. What a place to be born and grow up in. So he's basically looking at this town in Pakistan and saying, what a dump. Can you imagine living here? What a horrible place. And I don't know, just seems a little bit impolite to go to someone else's country and then say that, especially when, what do you know? These people live there, and the fact that you look out your train window and you don't see anything interesting, well, that's kind of on you. Get off the train, go into that town, spend a few days there. People are farmers, people are metal workers, people are teachers, people go to school, people have children, people are raising families. People are living rich, full lives in this town, just like everyone else in the world. The fact that it looks a little bit dusty as you pass by in your train car, what do you know about what's going on in that town? They could have, I'm sure they do have a rich, full life. There are sports teams there. People are just living their lives, and everybody lives in their own lives. And who are you to judge them as you go by on your train? And again, as a travel vlogger, it seems like it's a weird default position, but he does default to that quite a bit in his videos. I think it's a way, he's basically saying, look at me traveling in this desolate place where nobody goes. Look how desolate it is. And it's a way of boosting up his own ego and his own image on YouTube at the expense of where he is. And then he kind of does that all the time. I didn't like that. And then they stopped at another train station, like the train was stopping from time to time, and he would go out onto the train station platform just to shoot some video and look around, and just little things. There was a sign up there that said, there was a sign above an office that said something about train station supervisor in English, said supervisor in English, but they had misspelled the word supervisor. There's like one letter. Instead of a V, it was a Y, I think. And then Bald, he points it out and says, he basically makes fun of them. Look at that, train supervisor, they can't even spell English. But again, I challenge him to write the word supervisor in the Pakistani script, right? English is not their language, so come on. I mean, if you want to make fun of something, the misspelling of an English word, that's low-hanging fruit, right? You should just be happy that there's an English word on a sign at all. It's like, oh yeah, oh look, I'm happy that they have some English. And if they happen to misspell one of the English words, let it go. It's not worth pointing out and making fun of the local people because they can't spell a word in your language. Again, I challenge him, spell a word in their language with their script. I don't think you will have much success. And a lot of his interactions with people seemed to me like he was making fun of them all the time. He was on the same train station platform looking at the word supervisor, and then he had a story to tell about this place because it was called Jacobobad or something like that. And then it turns out that it was named after a British person, and he knew the history. So he wanted to tell that story, and he went out onto the train station platform, and there was a man there, a local man, an older man, with a big full beard. He looked like a village elder kind of person. And he turned to him, and he said something to him. He said to him in English, in his usual kind of very fast way, like, oh, do you know why this place is called Jacobabad? Do you know why? Do you know where the name came from? And the man kind of looked at him, and I can't remember what the man said, but he said something in his local language, and then Bald said, yes, and that's correct. And then he goes off and tells his story, just walks away from him and ignores him. But he basically used that man as a prop for the story he wanted to tell. It's like, oh, hey, do you know why it's called Jacobabad? Yes, absolutely. Yes, that is correct. That is why And then he walked away from the man. I don't know. It was a bit rude. You wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that to anyone, but I wouldn't do it to someone in Canada, use them as a prop in my video. And then he did it to this man because he could get away with it, because he knew the man can't speak English. And he's just, I don't know, he's being jovial and he's being friendly and outgoing. So it's probably not a big deal, but it kind of rubbed me the wrong way too, where, he walked up to this older man and just kind of babbled at him in English, knowing he couldn't understand, and then just, yes, absolutely, correct, sir. And then he walked away, and just ignored him after that. It was just a weird kind of encounter. And the video kind of went on from there. So I don't know if there's going to be any more videos from him in Pakistan. Like maybe he is going to go traveling to some other areas. And it's also interesting where they stayed, of course. I always think about that. I'm always thinking about behind the scenes logistics. So like, again, I'm being very critical, but hey, I'm sure Bald and Bankrupt can take it. He's a very successful man. He doesn't need everybody to tell him how amazing his videos are. He can stand up to a little bit of a casual criticism, I think. But yeah, he went to Quetta, and then again, he was talking about how dangerous it was and how risky it was. And again, sensationalizing the YouTube video that he's making. But while he was there, of course, he was staying in the, I had to track this down because he doesn't show the video, doesn't show the hotel, but you see a little bit of it from the outside. And then I went to Google Maps and I tracked down the hotel because you can match up, what it looks like. And this was the Serena Hotel, 4-star hotel, with massive amounts of security, lots of men with guns all posted all around. And it costs $160 per night. 4-star hotel, $160 per night, for a room there. I mean, which is fine. He has the money, so why not? If you're going to go there for a couple of nights, you might as well stay at the, the fanciest hotel. But of course, he never shows anything inside the hotel because that would kind of, ruin the illusion of going to this, terribly desperate, desolate, dangerous place. And he was probably, he's staying in the lap of luxury at the most expensive hotel in the city, with lots of security. So, yeah, I always want to see the behind-the-scenes details. That always interests me. But, yeah. So, that is Bald and Bankrupt in Pakistan so far. I should add one more thing about this video, and it might be the most amusing thing, and I should add it because a friend of mine originally pointed out this video to me. I probably would not even have watched it on my own because I've never been to Pakistan, so I can't really relate to his experiences there. But a friend of mine, sent me a link to the video and hinted at something about, like, oh, I'm curious to hear what you will think of this. And I can't quite remember what he said, but there was something in his message that gave me a clue as to what he might be thinking about. And then as I watched the video, I think I know what caught his attention. And he thought it would also catch mine because I am a big believer in accuracy. I'm no expert in anything. I'm not a geographic expert or an expert in history or art or music or anything. But if I do say something in a video, I do like it if it's actually true, And if I'm out there exploring and I say something and then I'm editing the video later and I realize, oh, I was wrong about that, it really annoys me. And then I will try to fix it in the video if I can, or even delete that whole section if I know what I said was historically inaccurate. I get the year wrong, or I use the wrong name, or the, place name, or something. And in this case, Bald made a big deal out of going on the train and going through a pass. I believe it was called the Bolan Pass. So, mountain pass. And he talked about how historically it was very important because Alexander the Great came through this pass with his armies. And Bald and Bankrupt really made a meal out of this. He talked about it a lot, over and over. You take a shot every time he says Alexander the Great. And Alexander the Great goes through this pass. You'll be a little bit tipsy, if not quite drunk, by the end of the video, because he mentions Alexander the Great going through the Bolan Pass many times. So I figured, okay, there must be something wrong about that. Like I don't know off the top of my head. If you told me Alexander the Great went through this pass, I'll take your word for it. But because my friend hinted at something, I went digging and I started reading about the history of Alexander the Great and his armies and his invasions and all that kind of thing. And it turns out that Alexander the Great himself did not go through the Bolan Pass. I believe a part of his army did. There was like a section of his army did, but under the command of another person. And Alexander the Great never went near this place. And, and I looked through the comments, and I think a few people pointed this out. And then if you look at the video description from Bald and Bankrupt, he admits the mistake, because he leaves all that in the video because it is the heart and soul of the whole video, just about this story of Alexander the Great and the train and going through the mountain pass. He really talks about it a lot, so he couldn't really delete it. You know, he didn't even correct himself in a caption or a subtitle. He just let it go. But in the video description, he put a little sentence there saying, "Oh, I've since learned that I was wrong, and Alexander the Great did not actually go through this pass." And then he put in, you know, FF8s, FFS, you know. So it's like, okay. So he eventually realized his mistake. I don't know at what point, you know, somebody probably had to tell him. But yeah, I thought that was pretty funny. So I didn't pick up on it on my own. I had to go do research later on to figure out. And to be honest, I didn't do a lot as I was watching his video. I didn't do a lot of research. I might have read about Orangi and, you know, the district that he called the biggest slum in the world, which turns out it isn't the biggest slum in the world. And I read about Alexander the Great. But all the rest, I didn't really do a lot of reading because I couldn't figure out what he was talking about. You know, where was he even trying to go? I couldn't figure out what the name of these towns were, so I couldn't find them on Google Maps, and I didn't feel like becoming, you know, super detective. I was like, this video is not that important to me, and I'm not going to bother. And I just watched the video, and then I moved on to Backpacker Ben's video of this same experience in the same time period, which comes up next. I was really excited when I saw that Backpacker Ben posted his own video, and the video is called "The City Tourists Don't Visit." Of course, that's another YouTube cliche. At this point, it's a cliche. You either have to go to the wildest, the craziest, the most dangerous, the dirtiest, the poorest, the nuttiest. You know, you have to use a superlative in your title, or you have to claim that you are doing something so wild and crazy and dangerous that nobody else dares do it. You know, you go where no tourists ever go. And that's a big cliche on YouTube, you know. So Backpacker Ben, the city tourists don't visit. And I assume he means Quetta, where they went by train, except in his video, they don't make it to Quetta. He's making a separate video about that. His whole video is just about Karachi. So I guess he's claiming that tourists don't go to Karachi. I guess, yeah, the implication is, well, it's Pakistan, it's too dangerous. You know, most Americans would be afraid of going to Pakistan. But I'm pretty sure a lot of tourists do go there. I don't know. But anyway, it is a cliche title. I was a bit disappointed in that. And I was hoping for a lot more from his video. I was hoping that he would give a lot more insight than Bald and Bankrupt's, because that's the usual pattern where Bald and Bankrupt's video is kind of confusing and erratic, and you kind of have to like, what is he talking about and where is he going? And then Backpacker Ben will give quite a bit more behind the scenes information. But he doesn't give a lot here. And to be honest, I was kind of disappointed in his whole attitude. And it seemed to me like he was emulating Bald and Bankrupt, like he is behaving in the way Bald does. He's being influenced by hanging out with Bald and Bankrupt. So there was this really weird segment. I thought it was quite unusual. They went to this beach, and Backpacker Ben was there. They all went to the same beach together, Ben and Bald and Bankrupt and Simon Wilson, and Backpacker Ben shows the other two of them, but then they kind of go off in their separate directions a little bit to shoot their own video. And then Backpacker Ben saw a man selling some food, like snacks on the beach. And then he went up to the man and, you know, talked to him, like, oh, what is that? And found out what it was. It was potato. And then he said, oh, I'll have one of those. And I was expecting him to, you know, it was like a typical YouTuber travel vlog experience. Try the local food, you know, street snacks, you know, beach snacks. So I thought he was, oh, look, there's a guy selling something. That might be tasty. And then he went to the guy and said, oh, can I have one of those? And he got it, and the guy took the potato. I think he peeled it and he cut it open, added a bunch of vegetables and sauces and different things. You know, he prepared the thing, cut it up into pieces, and then gave it to Backpacker Ben, and then he paid for it. And then I was expecting him to try it. It's like, you know, and talk about it. Oh, this is really good, or, ooh, this is too spicy, you know, whatever he's going to say about it. But it turns out the whole thing was a setup for a joke. He had no intention of eating it. And I guess this was assumed that the food here is going to be so dirty and so horrible and so terrible that there's no way they're going to touch any of the food. So he bought it in order to make fun of it and use Bald and Bankrupt to make fun of the food. He was like, I'm going to give this to Bald and Bankrupt. And he knew that Bald wouldn't touch that food because I think he's quite famous at this point for he doesn't trust local food. He won't eat it because he thinks it's too dirty. So, and I was just sort of surprised that that Backpacker Ben was leaning into this joke. Again, it's, you know, making fun of the food of Pakistan, making fun of the local people, using their food as a prop to make a joke for YouTube. And anyway, Backpacker Ben was holding this potato, and then he's walking down the beach, and he finds Backpacker Ben, finds Bald and Bankrupt, and he's like, hey, I got some food for you. I got something for you, you know, street or beach food. Here, I got you some potato. And then Bald and Bankrupt came up to him and then basically looked at it, grabbed a piece of the potato, pretended he was going to eat it, and then he just threw it away. It's like, yeah, right. As if I'm going to eat anything like that. You know, I wouldn't touch food like that. Like, don't be so stupid. And he threw it away. I don't know. It doesn't seem like a very necessary part of a travel video or something that's very nice to do. And then they kept walking along, and then Backpacker Ben is still holding the potato. He's not going to eat it. And then he sees a beggar, like a very, very poor man, obviously living on the streets, walking by, and he figures, oh, well, this food isn't good enough for me, it's not good enough for Bald, but it's good enough for him. And then he went up to the guy and said, oh, here, have some food. And even as he's handing it to him, he kind of handles it roughly, and some of the potato falls off and falls down, you know, and then he gives the guy the food, you know, gives the food to the beggar, and then that's the end of that sequence. And I don't know, okay, he bought some food and he gave it to the beggar. He didn't just throw it away, but still, I don't know, the whole thing rubbed me the wrong way. And I'm also confused. I kind of thought these guys, their entire reputation is based on being such incredible adventurers. They go places where no tourists go. They go to dangerous areas, you know, they're rough and tough, and they're out there exploring the world. And yet, isn't part of that reputation trying the local food? How can you be this rough and tough adventurer and you're too scared to eat the local food? I don't know, it just seems, it kind of seemed out of place to me. I'm surprised that they would even put that on video because it makes them look pretty timid for, you know, rough and tough adventurers. Yeah, it's kind of funny. And that continued later on because Backpacker Ben joined up with Simon Wilson, and I guess I don't know anything about Simon Wilson. I glanced at his YouTube channel. Let me just take a quick look at it to refresh my memory. Okay, here's Simon Wilson, and as I said, I don't know anything about the guy. He's also from the UK, you know, I think from England, and very popular YouTuber. He has over 1 million subscribers, 406 videos, and if you click on most popular, you know, yeah, 3.8 million views, 3.6 million, 3 million, 3 million, 2 million, 2 million, you know, very, very popular YouTuber. And it looks like his gimmick is like one of these doing things at random. And I mean, a lot of superlatives. So the very first video I see, I took the cheapest flight and ended up, So the gimmick is he went to the airport, packed a bag, he has no idea where he's going to go, and then the gimmick is I'm going to go to the airport and I will go to wherever the cheapest flight goes. And then that's what the video is about. You know, it's a very clever idea. And then the other video, the second one from 1 month ago, is overnight in the world's first ice hotel. So again, it's like a superlative thing, you know, the only or the first ice hotel, and then he sleeps in this ice hotel. Overnight in a glass igloo, overnight on an Arctic sleeper train. So he does a lot of these gimmick things. There's a whole bunch here about Monopoly. I played Monopoly in real life. So he went on a lot of YouTube travel trips based on, I guess, rolling the dice on a Monopoly board. And then wherever his piece lands, he actually has to go to that place in the United States. Maybe. I haven't watched those, so I'm just guessing. And then he did the same thing, Monopoly International Edition. He went to a country after flipping a coin. Like, he doesn't know what country he's going to go to, but it's some sort of World Cup thing, just flips a coin, and however the coin lands, that's the country he's going to go to. So 7 continents in 7 days. So I do like the ideas, because I do like travel videos to have a bit of structure. Like here's one. He took an Uber, and then he said he's going to go to wherever that Uber driver is from. So I don't know where, he's probably in London. He called up an Uber, and then he asked the driver, okay, what country are you from? And I don't know where the guy ended up being from, but if he's from Bangladesh, oh, I have to go to Bangladesh. He's from Uganda, I have to go to Uganda. And Sweden with no money, lost in the African bush. Anyway, I don't know anything about him. I don't know whether I would like his videos or not. But I got the impression, in the video, like in Backpacker Ben's video, he does say that he is there to try street food. That's what his video is about. He hasn't posted his video yet. So anyway, he does say that, or Backpacker Ben says it. So then the two of them, Backpacker Ben and Simon Wilson, they get in a local Baychak or taxi or something, and they go to the big street food in Karachi. And Simon Wilson, he has a big camera. Like Backpacker Ben is just like Bald and Bankrupt. He's shooting with a little Sony X3000. That's all he has for camera gear. But Simon Wilson is a bit more focused, I think, on gear. And he has like a Canon EOS R8 or R5. I'm not sure. It might be an R5, R8. I think it's a full frame camera. But anyway, it's a bigger, nicer camera. He looks like a Casey Neistat guy, because he's got the big Joby tripod grip on his Canon. It's got a small lens on it, but it's a big camera. Anyway, so the two of them went to the food street because Simon Wilson says he has to, try a lot of street food. But then they get there and they didn't eat anything. At least Backpacker Ben didn't. And I don't know, the videos just really confuse me, because the very first thing they went up to, I mean, I recognized it instantly. They're in the market. They went up to this thing. It was a big vat of boiling oil, and they're making jalebi. It's an orange, sugary snack, very famous in India, very famous in Pakistan, very famous in that part of the world. Everybody who travels knows about jalebi. Anybody who's been to India, they know about jalebi. So they walk up to this thing, and I'm thinking, oh, they're starting off with jalebi. But they had no idea what it was. They were looking at it. It's like, what is that? And they're talking to local people. That kind of surprised me. And I don't know if he actually had any or not. But they looked like, they didn't want to try. It's like, oh, no way am I trying that. Maybe he bought one and he took a little nibble of it. And then they got some kind of a donut. And then I think Backpacker Ben took one bite out of the donut. And then Simon Wilson was teasing him, like, finish the donut, eat it, eat it, eat it. And then Backpacker Ben was, oh, later, later. But it was pretty clear he didn't even eat the donut. And then they went up to like a rice and chicken place, big vats. And then they were talking to the guy about the meal. And again, I was expecting them, well, order some and eat some. But then they didn't either. Like the guy said it was really spicy. And then they showed him some other that wasn't so spicy. So Backpacker Ben was like, oh, okay, let me try some of that. And he got like a pinch with his fingers. Like he went into the rice and just pinched a couple of grains of rice. And it's like, oh, so spicy. And that, I think that was the end of the video. So I was like, hey, what is going on? Like, what have I stumbled into here? We've got these travel vloggers who don't dare try any of the local food. And even when they went to the famous street, like the famous food street, they went there on purpose. In the video, Backpacker Ben doesn't eat any of the food. And the food that they did buy, he nibbled on it and didn't dare eat any more than that. So like, I don't know, does Pakistan have such a reputation that the food is unhygienic? You hear that about, India. And I remember when I was in Bangladesh, in Dhaka, I went through a lot of back streets and I saw a lot of restaurants where, to be honest, I was like, no, I don't think I'm going to try that. It was really, really dirty inside, this restaurant. So there were a few places where I backed away. No, I don't think I want to risk that. But that didn't stop me from eating the local food. I ate the local food, the street food all the time, everywhere I went in all these restaurants. There were other food stalls that, okay, this looks like a fine, normal food stall. I would go there, have my meal, go to this restaurant, have my meal, street snacks. I was sampling everything all the time. That is just normal life. So here they are in Karachi at the famous food street. And in the little bit of video I saw, everything looked fine there. Everything looked clean. Everything looked like a normal food street from any city in this part of the world. Nothing looked particularly dirty or dodgy. So I don't know why he was so scared of the local food. And even when they were on the beach, and as I said, Backpacker Ben, he did buy something, but he had no intention of eating it, and he only used it to make fun of Bald and Bankrupt about how dirty the food is and they don't dare touch it. And then the three of them went to McDonald's, right? So instead of having any of the food on the beach, they all went to McDonald's and they had lunch at McDonald's on the beach. And then again, I'm sort of scanning the comments, looking for people making fun of them, like, oh, Bald and Bankrupt or Backpacker Ben, you're supposed to be these intrepid travelers, and then what are you doing at McDonald's? Like, I'm sure if I went to McDonald's and made a video about it, everybody would, not everybody, but I mean, there would be a comment teasing me, saying, oh, come on, you went all the way to Indonesia only to eat at McDonald's? And they would tease me a little bit. That's just natural. But here we've got three guys going on and on and on about going to the most dangerous part of the world where nobody goes, and the first thing they do is run to McDonald's. Somebody's got to tease them about it, but almost nobody did. So that was kind of my my first thoughts about Backpacker Ben's video. I may have had some other thoughts. Let me take a look at my notes. Just a couple of other things, that I picked up on. At some point in the video, Backpacker Ben and Simon Wilson, they took a local city bus, and they noticed that there was a possibility of riding on the roof, and it felt again like that he was emulating Bald and Bankrupt, because they did that when they were in Bangladesh. And then Bald had a whole video about riding on top of the train in Dhaka, because there are very famous images out there on the internet of trains in Bangladesh where the top of the train has hundreds of people like riding the train but sitting on the top. So he wanted to do that and make a video about it. And then now they're in Pakistan, and Backpacker Ben did the same thing but in a bus. And then he got into the bus originally because there were police checkpoints. But once they got past the police, he heard that, okay, now it's okay. And then he climbed up onto the top of the bus. And they even got Simon Wilson, because I don't think Simon does these sorts of things normally, but he convinced Simon to climb on top of the bus as well. And for him to do it with a Canon R8 camera, you know, with a big Joby pod, was a lot more challenging than doing it with a little Sony X3000. And then Simon, that's quite funny. I thought, you know, Simon, they talked Simon into getting on the top, and then Simon's on the ladder and he just sort of stops at one point. He's like, what am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? I mean, if I fall off, I'm going to die, you know? I don't think it was normal behavior for Simon. But yeah, Backpacker Ben rode on top of the bus, you know, to go out into the outskirts. And that's kind of a classic Bald and Bankrupt activity as well. This idea of just going places at random. And that happened a lot in Karachi, where the three of them are walking together, and then some local guy on a motorcycle would pull up beside them and just start chatting with them, you know, hey, where are you from? I'm from England, oh, da 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 da. And then Bald and Bankrupt would just hop on his motorcycle and just say, okay, let's go somewhere. Like, he doesn't care where he goes, just let's go. And then the guy will just ride off into the city, and Bald and Bankrupt will just go wherever this guy takes him. You know, it has that random quality, which I think is kind of interesting. And then Backpacker Ben has started doing the same thing and just sort of ending up in random places and just going with people anywhere they want to take him, even if he doesn't even understand where they're going. And, you know, I kind of enjoy that. But yeah, so my take on Bald and Bankrupt and Backpacker Ben's first videos from Pakistan. And I'm hoping there will be another one from Backpacker Ben, a video about the train ride, and then maybe a third video about being in Quetta and then trying to get permission from the military to go. Maybe Backpacker Ben will explain more about where it is they're trying to go, because as I said, Bald and Bankrupt never even brings it up that I can remember. So we will see what happens. And just a last thought about Simon Wilson and his type of YouTube video. I find that really interesting because it ties in with something I was talking about the other day, that there's an entire genre of YouTube videos where you do something almost at random that costs a lot of money because you have confidence that the video will be so popular that it will make enough money to pay for the random thing you did. And these even extend into, like, technically charity things, where, you know, you see some YouTube videos where a guy, the title of the video is, I paid for a stranger's rent. You know, say they just go up to a house and it looks like a poor house, poor people live there or whatever. He just knocks on the door and says, hey, I'd like to pay for your rent. Like, what is your rent per month? And the guy says, oh, my rent is $2,000 a month. And the guy just takes out $2,000 and says, here you go, I paid for your rent. And that's the video. I've never watched one of those videos, so I don't know what happens after that. But the idea is the video will get 2 million views because of the subject, and then he will make $2,000 plus from the video. So, or you can go up to a stranger and give them a free MacBook and MacBook Pro. Hey, would you like a free computer? Here you are. And then they post that YouTube video and they make more money from the video than the cost of the MacBook Pro. Or maybe these people are independently wealthy and they can just afford to do this, though I don't think so. You know, as I said the other day, Mr. Beast is kind of the king of this sort of thing, you know, where he will spend $1 million on making a YouTube video because he knows the video is going to make $1 million, or he makes a lot of money from his other side stream businesses or something. Anyway, Simon Wilson's videos are like that in a different way, you know, like I said, where he would, you know, I haven't watched the video again, but I'm assuming he's in London, and then he just tosses a coin, and the coin tells him what country he has to fly to. Or he calls up an Uber and then asks the Uber driver, if most of them might be immigrants, and he's like, oh, what country are you from? And then it turns out that they're from Lesotho. And he's like, oh, okay. And then he books a flight to Lesotho. He lets circumstances dictate where he goes, and he can afford to do that because his YouTube channel makes enough money that he can do that, and he has confidence that the video about going to Lesotho will pay for the flight. And I do find that kind of thing interesting, but of course, you have to be able to afford to do it. And at this point, I couldn't I couldn't take a map of the world. That would be kind of a fun one to do. Maybe you put a map of the entire world on the wall, and then you put on blindfolds, and you take a dart, and then you just throw a dart at the map, and whatever country, whatever city your dart lands on, you have to go there. And so I sit here in Medan, and I do that, and it lands on, I don't know, let's pick a country I want to go to. It lands on, Uganda. I'm like, oh, I have to go to Uganda. And that would be a fun video title, but of course I can't afford the flight to Uganda. But if I knew the video would pay for that flight, it would be an interesting thing to do. Anyway, I only bring that up because I find it an interesting genre of YouTube videos, and there are a bunch of them out there. Let's see if I can pick out a couple more from Simon Wilson that fit this category. I guess here's one. 7 Wonders of the World in 7 Days. And this also kind of relates to what I was talking about the other day, the difference between what a video looks like and then what the experience actually was like. So I guess the idea here, this is from 4 years ago, that he is going to go to all 7 wonders of the world, and he's going to do it in 7 days. So he goes to the Colosseum in Italy, Pyramids of Egypt, Petra, Jordan, Taj Mahal, the Great Wall of China, Chichen Itza in Mexico, and then the big Jesus statue in Rio. Are those the 7 wonders of the world, the 7 modern wonders of the world? Anyway, according to his list, those are the 7. And then he went boom, 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 1 per day. I guess it worked. Every video has like 700,000, 600,000, 600,000, 600, 600, 600, 500,000 views. And I assume that made enough money for him to pay for this trip. So that's a success from a YouTube point of view. But is there any value in doing that? For one thing, would you enjoy it? Would you get anything out of it? Surely the Colosseum deserves more than a rushed visit that you can cram into 1 day in between 2 flights. Same thing for the pyramids, Petra, Taj Mahal. Like if you actually did this in real life, it would probably be miserable. All you're doing is flying, going from airport to airport to airport to airport to airport, and it's got to be an awful experience, really. In the video, you can pretend that it's a big adventure and that it's a lot of fun. But again, if you said to me, Planet Doug, would you like to go to the 7 wonders of the world? Well, yeah, okay, I'll go to these places, but I want to spend a week at each place. If I'm going to Cairo to see the pyramids, to be honest, I want to spend a month in Cairo. And I'll spend a month in Jordan, a month in Agra, to see the Taj Mahal. And so the whole experience for me would be a miserable, unpleasant experience, even though the video makes it look like it's really exciting and really a lot of fun. So I do find that side of YouTube to be kind of interesting. as a modern activity. Like in the past, things like this never would have been possible. You know, you couldn't just do anything you couldn't do anything like this because, you know, YouTube didn't exist. How long ago did he start doing this? It's pretty interesting. Looks like he might have been one of the original people to come up with this idea, because 4 years ago he's got Hong Kong with no money, and he's got 3 days, 3 videos, yeah, day 1, day 2, day 3, surviving in Hong Kong with no money. So again, a YouTube gimmick. And then Scotland with no money, the cheapest flight in the world, living for free in Oslo, Norway, so 24 hours with no money. Let's go all the way back. Let's set his videos from oldest to newest. I love going back to the beginning of YouTube channels. It's so interesting. You know, I'm sure people eventually delete a lot of their first videos so that their channel starts at a logical point. But it's always interesting to see. His very first one is called First Vlog Ever. And then his third one is called Why My Business Failed and I'm Leaving the Country. So that's kind of his origin story. And it's very similar to Bald and Bankrupt, because I think when you go into the legend of Bald and Bankrupt, he had a bunch of businesses that failed and he went bankrupt. And there are stories about he had to flee, you know, England because he had debts and he went bankrupt, and there was some, you know, some shady goings on there, perhaps, the legend. But I mean, it's right in his name, and he tells the story, yeah, I went bankrupt, and then I started making money on YouTube because I started traveling. I had to leave the country because I went bankrupt. And then it goes on from there. And you can see in his videos, like a variety of topics. He's trying out different topics, different subjects, different filming techniques, just trying to find something that works, something he enjoys, and then something that it becomes popular. And all right, very interesting, because most of his first 1, 2, 3, 4 times 4, his first 15 videos are not popular. You know, 6,000 views, 12,000 views, 13,000 views. And then he has a video called Sneaking into Mayweather versus McGregor. So it's a big boxing match between Conor McGregor and Mayweather. I remember it from 6 years ago. And I guess he snuck in to see it, made a video about it, and that video, 3 million views. So he was trying out all these different techniques, and then he stumbled into this idea, and he's like, okay, gimmick. This is what you need to be popular on YouTube. And now he snuck into the Emmy Awards, 700,000 views. And then from there, I don't know, he kind of went back to normal for a while. Did a couple of more sneaking, trying out different things. I'm looking for the first, like a random circumstance of life dictates what he does in the video. I want to find the very first one. Yeah, I always have mixed feelings about these sorts of things, and maybe with this idea, I'll wind up this behind the scenes video where I do like it. It's like imposing a structure on a travel experience, kind of gives you something to hang your hat on, makes it more interesting, and it gives you some structure to the experience. But say you're traveling across the United States with no money. I've seen that done a number of times. There's actually been travel books based on that. But it's fun and exciting and it's interesting, but now you're suddenly taking advantage of the generosity of strangers, right? So every time you do one of these random challenges, you do have to stop for a minute and think about the ethics of it. Like, you know, there is a world out there, a lot of people in the world are in financial trouble. Street people, beggars, people that have no money, and they do get helped by people out of the generosity of their heart. And now we have a guy who could get a job if he wanted to, and he could make money if he wanted to, and he's making money from YouTube, but now he's creating an artificial situation where he travels across an entire country for 40 days, having a big fun experience, and doing it all only because other people along the way pay for everything for him. Okay, what are the ethics of that? You know, I'm not sure, to be honest. I haven't really thought this through, but I know personally I couldn't do it because I would feel weird about that. Like landing in Los Angeles, like right now, getting on a flight, landing in LA, and then what? You just walk up to random strangers and say, hey, I'm doing YouTube videos. Can you pay for my taxi into downtown LA? And then you just walk into, you know, what do? Wander around the streets? Oh, would you pay for my hotel room? I'm doing this YouTube challenge. I need you to pay for my dinner. I need you to pay for, like, exactly how does that work? I haven't watched his videos, so I don't know the logistics of what he did. But the only way it would make sense for me would be if I were walking. Like if I landed at the LA airport and I had a bicycle maybe. I'm riding my bike across the United States and I try to do it with no money if I got jobs along the way. Okay, starting with no money and now you work and earn money, okay, that's fine. That's an adventure I could get behind. Or you're going to walk across the United States and then you go up to a restaurant and say to them, listen, I don't have any money. Can I wash dishes for 5 hours? And then you give me dinner and a place to sleep. Cool. You know, I can get on board with that. Maybe that's what he did. I don't know. I'll have to watch the videos and find out. But anyway, I just wanted to ramble a little bit about these crazy YouTube challenges and videos where you let circumstances dictate what you do next. I do find the idea interesting, but I don't know if it would be something that I could ever do or would really have any interest in doing. Yeah. Anyway, the end of my YouTube stories for today. All right, a little bit of a palate cleanser for my behind the scenes video. I have so many pet peeves, and I have a category in my BTS videos that I call pet peeves. And I haven't talked about any pet peeves for a long time just because I've had other things to talk about and I talk for so long. But anyway, just to a palate cleanser to ease out of YouTube stories, I do have a pet peeve that I've thought about recently, and it has something to do with being here in Medan, because when I make my YouTube videos, I like to put in a lot of information. So if I walk by something, I like to put in a caption in the video, the name of that thing. Or if I'm on a street, I like to find out the name of the street and put the name in a caption. So I'm always looking up things like that and street names, things like that. But then you quickly realize, and you run into this problem, that in Medan and in Taipei and in Seoul and in almost every city in Asia that I've spent time in, street names change constantly. And I don't know why they do that. I don't understand the logic. I'm always trying to go somewhere, I remember doing this in Seoul like long ago when I was applying for jobs at schools, you know, English teaching schools, and they tell me what street they're on, but I can never find the street because it'll be one long street, you know, 3 kilometers long, and every 2 blocks the name of the street changes. Every time you go over an intersection, the same street has a new name. And I find this to be inefficient and illogical, dumb, And I don't know why this is true. Like, what is the point of this? And how long has it been this way? And am I missing something? Is this actually a good way to name streets? Are there benefits to this I'm not aware of? But anyway, I'm looking at the street just outside my hotel here. I wanted to find out what the name of that street was, and I looked at it and it was like, oh, this is Jalan Ani Idris Street. Okay, and I write down that name, but then after the next intersection, oh, no, it's called Jalan Letjen Suprapto. Oh, so that's the name of the street. You go down to the next intersection. Oh, at that intersection, now it's called Jalan Jenderal Sudirman Street. You go another couple of blocks, go through an intersection, and now it has a different name. And then you turn and go down this street, and every block, every 2 blocks, this street, the name changes. And my question to the world, my pet peeve, is what is the point of this? Like, again, go in a city like Toronto, we have Yonge Street, which is like I think it's one of the longest continuous streets in the world. And then you start at one end of Yonge Street and go all the way to the end, and it's always Yonge Street. But the only thing that changes are the address numbers. Here's 222 Yonge Street, 224, 226, 228, 230, 232, and on the other side of the street are the odd numbers, 219 Yonge Street, 221, 223, 225. And to me, with my logical brain, that's how I would name streets. My hometown in Sarnia, I know the names of all the streets, and they all have the same name from beginning to end. There's Lakeshore Drive, there's Murphy Road, there's Exmouth Street, there's London Road, and the street name doesn't change. You might go down London Road, and you might leave the city completely, and then after you leave the city limits, it turns into a regional highway. Of course, at that point, it might turn into something else, but the entire distance inside the city where everybody lives on that street, it's London Road from beginning to end. And then the buildings just have address numbers. So there's 728 London Road. And beside it is 730 London Road, 732 London Road. So it's really easy to locate any address on that street. But here in Asia, addresses are completely hopeless because the number and the street name only applies to one block of that street, and the next block has a different name, and then the next block has a different name. And I don't understand why that is, nor do I understand if it has any kind of advantages that I'm not aware of. So there you go. Planet Doug pet peeve, a Planet Doug mystery. And that's it. That's it for this morning. I'm going to shut down, wind up my behind the scenes thoughts for this morning, and I'm going to head out and have something for lunch and move on with my day. So thank you once again. If you are still here hanging out with me for all of this time, and as always, I'll see you next time in the next video. I'll see you later.